Welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast, the resource for transitional and experienced genealogists who want to create a successful business. I'm your host, Marion Pierre-Louis. Here you'll learn from professionals all around the world who work in the field of genealogy. Are you ready to learn and grow together? Then let's get started. This podcast is sponsored in part by the Association of Professional Genealogists. You can find out more about them at www.apgen.org. Welcome to Episode 5 of the Genealogy Professional Podcast. Today we are turning south in the United States to Tennessee to catch up with Cinamon Collins. Welcome, Cinamon, to the Genealogy Professional Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you here. Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and give us an overview of your genealogy business?
Well, I was raised in New Jersey, went to college in New York City, and moved to Los Angeles, where I met my husband. And now I currently live in Franklin, Tennessee, which is just outside of Nashville. And my business was sort of a organic process of how it came together. Like many genealogists, as a child, I was interested in family and where we came from and what we were about. And as I got older, I started to research, and it just sort of morphed into this business that I do now, which I love. And the services I currently offer, of course, are researching family history. I can write up your family history, research specific lines, people, basically kind of whatever you want. And I also do forensic genealogy research, which is genealogy research with legal implications. Usually it's for probate lawyers or some sort of research into inheritance and land and property and where it should be divided or how the money's supposed to be divided.
You had mentioned how you kind of organically came into genealogy. Is there any one thing that inspired you to become a professional genealogist?
You know, I just really love doing this. It's my passion. I have two small children, and I just was trying to figure out what I could do while I was raising them that would allow me to be able to have a little bit of income while they're going to school and or being at home. And that's just sort of how it came about. You know, I realized this is what I love doing, and I'm able to kind of have the best of both worlds while I had one at home, one in school, and all of that sort of chaos that goes on when you're raising kids, but still want to have your foot in a business.
Most people come to genealogy from another profession. Did you do something else before you became a genealogy professional?
I was a teacher before coming into genealogy. I taught fourth grade for 6 years, and I was also a wedding photographer on the side. And before that, I was a photo publicist. And then many moons before that, I worked in New York City in the Diamond District selling jewelry.
Wow, I can see that you have quite a variety of skills from all that background.
Yeah, I do. It's you know, each profession has kind of given me a little bit of something that I can apply towards my business.
So what were some of those skills that you brought from those previous jobs, and how do they help you now in your business?
Well, I think some skills people naturally have, you know, and then other skills have to be developed, and then there's other skills that you just don't have, regardless of how much you try and study up on it and do it. And, you know, it's just you either have a knack, an ability, or it's just not really there. But I think those skills for me that I have are just sort of attention to details, thinking outside of the box, and having to be organized. As a teacher, I had 32 9-year-olds that I had to organize in my classroom, and you can either not be organized and have complete chaos going on, or, you have your act together and you have a successful day, week, year, and successful grades and performance from children. And so you learn how to manage people by doing that. And as a wedding photographer, when I was working with clients, I had to make sure I understood what they wanted and be able to communicate with them if that was a reality and possible. Some people have ideas of what the end result is going to be, but it may not be possible given the location or the circumstances to achieve that idea. And so I think all those help now with dealing with clients, and that finding out what it is they want, because sometimes they don't even know. They just say, well, I want to research my family. Well, that's a very, very broad thing to say. And as a researcher, we know that, but people don't always realize what that means. And so I have to sort of guide them and get them more focused on maybe just one line or one or two generations, or, where did one specific person come from? It just depends on their family.
Do you also have to set their expectations about how long the research is going to take just on that one line and not the whole, and that they won't get it before Christmas?
Absolutely. We know how long it will take, and it's important to remember that, because when we're working in our field and talking amongst each other, we understand the talk, we understand the language. But when you're dealing with an outsider, someone who doesn't do this all the time, they don't realize that it's not as easy as the Ancestry.com commercials make it look of, I just go on Ancestry and I'll find all of my people and boom, done, or it's not as glossed over as the TV shows make it look, of where it looks easy, and it's not. Sometimes it can take a very long time, and hopefully you can find the results they want.
What skills did you lack when you started your business, and how did you overcome that?
Well, I think the one skill that is the most difficult, and it's something I still struggle with, it's gotten better, but there's room for improvement, is just gauging how long it will take to work on a project, how long it will take to write the client report. And it always, especially writing the client report, it always seems to take longer than what you think it will. And it's a time management issue. And I think that's the biggest challenge. And I think it's something that we all sort of struggle with in the beginning and throughout, really.
Yeah, I think that's a hard one to actually prepare for unless you've been doing something similar, before you actually get into a genealogy business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What was the hardest part of actually starting a genealogy business?
I think the hardest part is, how do you get clients? Where do you get them from? I ask this people all the time. How do you get clients? How do you get your name out there? Because if you don't have clients, you don't have a business. And that's the challenge, I think.
So what's the answer to that question?
I'd love to know. I think everybody has different answers. And, there's people that travel around and speak a lot, and I think they get a lot of clients through their speaking and lecturing engagements. I happen to get a lot of clients through APG, being on the APG list. I also have a website, so I get inquiries now through people landing on the website, which I think in this day and age, it's a must. You have to have a website so people can see what you're about. And even just thinking as a consumer, if somebody has a website and somebody doesn't, most likely as a consumer, I'll probably go with the person that has the website, just because I can see what they're all about and I don't need to call them and find out.
Do you put examples of past projects on your website? I don't mean specifically like this client or that, but, sort of a general. I'm just thinking about like search engine optimization if you want to attract a certain client, what can you add? Or do you have a blog?
I do have a blog.
Do you have any sense of which attracts more clients for you, the blog or the website? Because the blog is something that you write more often and you get more specific with. I'm just wondering if people find you more easily because of that.
I think I've had people contact me more through the website than I have about the blog, as far as research requests go. On my website, I just put down what services I offer and kind of what my focus is as far as family research, forensics, and then sort of general things of record pulls, which I don't get really too many requests for that. And I've also started offering a service of being able to put people's family in sort of a pedigree chart or poster size pedigree chart for them. And currently that's what I'm offering. I have ideas of how I want to expand, but right now I don't feel comfortable offering those services yet because my knowledge base is not where I would like it to be.
Yeah, I think that's one of the funny things about this profession is that we're constantly on a journey. You know,
oh, absolutely.
I don't think we ever arrive. We just feel more confident in our particular different areas of expertise as we go along.
Yes.
But I think that's part of the attraction as well because it keeps it fun.
Oh, it's fresh. I mean, every project, every client offers a new learning experience. And that's what's great about what we do. You're constantly learning and discovering new things.
Can you share a story of a specific obstacle that you encountered early in your career and how you worked around it?
I think lack of knowledge in a certain area. For example, a client wanted me to research her family in a particular county of Tennessee. And I didn't think it would be a problem. And it turns out it was the county that was just riddled with courthouse fires and flooding. And, the county lines changed because there was a new county that was introduced, then went away because that county went bankrupt. And then the TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, came in and moved cemeteries. And I mean, it was a nightmare. It was basically anything that could have gone wrong was going wrong for this particular research. And I didn't do the background check before getting back to the client. And what I mean by the background check is I didn't say, all right, well, let me look into this first and I'll get back to you about how much time it will take. Now what I do when I'm confronted with an unfamiliar county or unfamiliar location, I'll tell the client, give me an hour, let me do a little soft investigating, and I'll get back to you. And so now I go and look, what is the story with the courthouse? What kind of records does this place have? What's available, what's not, and I get a better sense of what I can do for the client as far as answering their question or finding information for them.
So in that particular case, did you actually quote the client a price and a time frame, and then you discovered, oh no, look at all these burnt courthouses?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those kind of lessons are so great to learn. Because they cure you of that immediately and you'll never, ever do it again, right?
Right, right.
We all have those moments for sure. Yeah, that's a really good one to learn.
Well, and I think also the other thing is that clients will say, oh, well, I have everything. I've got it all for you. It's all set. And you take them for their word, and then you get the material and you're thinking to yourself, no, they don't have everything. This is not complete. And so I think that's the other thing, is not guaranteeing or saying that you can do something without seeing what your client has to begin with.
That's really good too. It sets the whole stage for you, seeing what they have, and then you doing that initial research to determine what resources are going to be available to you. So
absolutely.
Yeah, excellent. Wow. Tell us about that moment in your business when everything started to come together and you became really confident about where you were heading.
Well, I'm not sure about really confident about where I'm heading, but I'd say in the past year, I've kind of hit a little bit of a stride. And basically, it's just manifested itself that I've studied a lot. I've studied hard. I'm constantly reading anything I can about research, history of an area that I'm researching in, things like journals, books, blogs, just how people are writing up a case study, how people are writing up a kinship determination, just or how they go about their research. And especially in complicated areas, just educating myself. And so I think this past year I feel just more confident with the clients I'm working with, in the quotes that I'm making. I just sort of feel like I've hit my stride in the past year.
Has the services that you've offered when you first started changed from what you're offering now? I mean, did you go from more general to more specific, or the opposite? What has happened over time?
It's slightly different. When I first started, I just offered family research, researching somebody's family or a record pool. Now it's spread out a little bit, writing up people's family histories in a narrative book rather than just a report. I've done a project like that in the past year. The forensic genealogy is a new service that I offer, and it's constantly evolving, and I think the business does for everybody. It just constantly evolves as you gain more experience and maybe stumble across things that you say to yourself, hey, I really enjoy doing this kind of work. I want to focus on this more.
Do you focus geographically? Like, do you do more Tennessee work because that's where you're located, or do you have projects coming from all over?
I definitely do more Tennessee work because that's where I'm located, for sure. And it's also, I mean, I feel very comfortable with these records because I'm dealing with them all the time. But I also do research elsewhere. And I had several months ago someone call me from Hong Kong or Singapore about doing some research for her mother, who was a World War II baby, meaning that the father was an American GI, and they didn't know who the father was exactly, where he went, what happened to him, exactly what his name was. And so they were trying to figure that out, and they thought maybe he had gone through Tennessee or had kin from Tennessee. And so I was trying to help them as best as I could, but then it was clear it was from another state. And I said, I'm not in that state, and the records you need are. So it's best if you go to a researcher from there. And I can recommend somebody if you need it, or you can look on the APG list and find somebody.
When somebody contacts you like that, I mean, like Hong Kong, that's like totally out of the ballpark, right?
Yeah.
Do you say to them, how did you find me?
If I remember to ask, yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's from the APG list. It's where I have gotten most of my clients from.
Mm-hmm. APG list meaning the directory on the APG website, or the APG list, the email list?
The directory on the website.
Okay. Now, let's talk about forensic, because I want to talk about a niche. And this is a newer service for you. How did you educate yourself so that you could be on track to become expert in that area?
I attended the Forensic Genealogy Institute in Dallas about a year ago. I think they have another one coming up in, I want to say March, at the end of March. So I attended that institute, and I learned specifics of what goes into doing forensic genealogy research and having a business and how to deal with the clients, because it's very different. It's very different dealing with lawyers as opposed to somebody who's researching their family. There's a different criteria, and you also have to be aware of the legal implications of what you're research will say and how you're responsible for it and how it could be presented in court. And it's also a different type of research because you're coming forward in time rather than going back necessarily. You may have to go back a little bit, but then you're coming more to current times to find living heirs. And it's sensitive. It's more sensitive.
Fascinating. It sounds like that Forensic Institute is really hands-on and practical.
It is. It's wonderful. It's people who are working in the field. It's what they do for a living, and they know what they're talking about. They can offer you advice. There's been times I've had questions of how should I handle this? What should I do? And I'll ask them, and they're more than willing and happy to help you.
What has been the most challenging aspect of being a genealogy professional from the business point of view?
Time, keeping track of your time and having to stop the research when you've run out of time, even though you want to keep going because maybe you're in the thick of it or you've discovered something and you just think, oh my gosh, I've got to find out what's happened. But you also realize that if you keep going, those are billable hours that you could be using on another project. And it's a tough call, and especially if the client doesn't want to go any farther. Sometimes they do, and they want to find out what's going on too. But sometimes they say, no, that's my budget. I can't go any farther. That's it. And time is the big management sort of elephant in the room.
So do you actually pull yourself away when you hit that time limit? Because I know this is the elephant in the room for genealogists. And when you get to that 3 hours or those 4 hours, do you consciously say, I've got to stop now, or maybe I'll just do it for another half hour, see? And then do you go to the client and say, well, I used up the time. This is where you should go. Or what do you say to the client,
I will say I'll just be very upfront with them and say, I've run out of time. But I feel I'm on track, that I'm close to finding out whatever the issue is. Do you want me to keep going or do you want me to stop? Or sometimes it's a situation of, I've answered the question you want, but I think there's more. Do you want me to keep going? It's a toss-up, and it kind of depends on the feel you have from the client. There's some that you just know they don't want to go any farther. There's some that you feel are open to the suggestion. And it also depends if it's somebody that you've worked with a lot before. It's just you develop sort of a relationship so that they trust your instincts. They trust your judgment. That helps a lot too. As with research, each situation is unique, and you kind of have to just make that judgment call of, should I ask them? Will they want to know? Or can I use this in my follow-up suggestions for further research in my client report? Have I answered their question and I can just put it in for further research? It just, it's a case-by-case decision. And then there's some things that I come across where I want to learn more about it. So I'll kind of keep going for my own education, as it were, my own curiosity.
I think that communication with the client is the second big elephant in the room. Learning how to do that. And I think it's hard. I think many of us don't feel comfortable when we first have to do that. But it's better for your business if you can.
It is, and I think, the more upfront you are in the beginning, the better it is for everybody. I'm always seeing threads of conversation on the Transitional Genealogists page or the APG mail page of, I didn't get paid. I sent the report. They never paid me. They didn't know, blah, blah, blah. When I get an inquiry, or they spend a lot of time chit-chatting with someone, and then after all this time going back and forth with emails or in phone conversations about what they want, then the price of it all will come up, the cost. And I just put it all out there up front. This is what I charge. I have a minimum amount of hours that I'll work. This is what you will get from the research. a full client report that's cited with an appendix of images when possible. And I just tell them if there's any other additional expenses other than copies, parking fees, I will ask them for approval first before I'll go ahead on it. I think the more open and honest and upfront and direct you are, the better it is for you and the better it is for the client, because then you can weed out the ones that aren't interested. If they don't want to pay, then they won't get back to you.
It sounds like you're really setting the client's expectations, which is so helpful.
It is. It is. Because they don't know what they're getting into. A lot of times they contact you by email. They've never seen you. They don't have any sort of reference about you. And I think it's important to make them feel comfortable about who they're giving their money over to and what they should be expecting.
Many genealogists offer a wide array of services like writing and speaking in addition to client reports. Do you do any of that? And, how did you decide, what mix of services you were going to do?
I offer what I'm comfortable offering. For example, I am comfortable doing family research for people. I'm comfortable with my writing skills enough to write up their family history for them. I'm comfortable with doing forensic genealogy research. And I believe in stretching yourself a little bit. So if somebody does ask you to research in another area that you've never researched before, I'm fine with doing that too, because your research skills and the genealogy proof standards still apply. It's a matter of finding out the idiosyncrasies of a different area to research in. So, stretching yourself in that aspect, I'm comfortable with. But I don't like to offer to do things that I don't know about or that is really sort of outside my comfort zone, because then it kind of becomes like false representation, false advertising. And I think you just have to be very honest with yourself about what you can do and what you're capable of doing.
Absolutely. I think you definitely have to stick with what you're comfortable with. Have you ever thought about doing something with photography just to extend, since you have experience with that, offering like a local photography service for gravestones or something like that?
Yeah, I could do that.
I was just tossing it out there just because I know you have, photography experience doing the weddings. It seems like a skill that you could really put to good use. Photographing ancestral homes or gravestones or something. It could be really fun, get you out in the field. All right, so here's the big question. How do you balance paid work versus volunteering?
Well, that is a tricky one, isn't it? It can be a challenge. I think you have to learn to say no. I currently have 3 volunteer positions that I handle. I volunteer at the Tennessee State Library and Archives, and I also volunteer for the Middle Tennessee Genealogical Society, and I'm the lineage research chairperson for my DAR chapter. And the society and the DAR chapter, they don't take up a tremendous amount of time. The society meets every other month, and we have an annual seminar in November. And as it leads up to the seminar, a little more time is required. But other than that, it's pretty light, so it's manageable. The same with the lineage research chair position. It's light work. It's not very taxing. The archives, generally, I go once a week for a couple hours and do some work for them. But that's a twofold volunteer position in my mind. I'm working with records. Some of them I've never worked with before, so it sort of meets my education plan goals. And I'm also forming relationships with the archivists there, and I get to see things or hear about things that I wouldn't normally know about if I wasn't there. And it's also doing good work for the community as far as, preservation. So I think when it comes to volunteering, and I also do some volunteer stuff at my children's school, you have to ask yourself, what is the end goal? what is your purpose for doing it? Is it personal satisfaction? Is it sort of an education opportunity? Is it networking, a way for you to get your name out there? Or are you doing it just because somebody asked you and you feel obligated to say yes and do it, and you don't really want to do it? And in that case, you should just say no. So, I don't know. I just think when it comes to volunteering, it's your time. It could be billable hours. So you have to make a choice about how you're using your time, and is it good for your business?
It sounds like you're right on target with that. So
I try to be.
Great.
There's some, and of course, look, there's some things I've gotten into where I've thought, I don't know why I said yes. What was I thinking? I had a weak moment and I said, oh, sure. And then I'm in the middle of it thinking, I should have said no.
Yeah, we've all had those moments. What is the most fun project that you've ever worked on that you can share with us?
I think anything that is challenging but not exasperating is fun. Anytime I can learn something new or find out something just fascinating is fun for me. Most recently, I kind of went out of my comfort zone with a client and had to do some research in Irish Boston in the second half of the 1800s and the early 1900s. I've never done research there before. And it was very different but yet the same, because it's the same principles of research that you apply, but different in that it was the most urban environment that I've had to do research in. Usually it's farm country people, that I'm researching. But in this particular case, it was an area that is highly populated and had a certain group of people that was heavily populated in that area. Do you know what I mean? It was Irish Boston, so it's South Boston. A lot of Irish families, all Irish families, and they shared the same first names and same last names, and they seemed to have the same naming pattern, so it was in the same order. And it was tricky at first, and I found...
What do you mean tricky at first? Irish research is always tricky. You've got 12 people born the same year with the same name.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And I know. And their brother or sister before and after them also have the same name. It was just the same kind of pattern. And it really just threw me for a loop at the beginning, because it was just like, whoa, how is this possible? And I found my way around it was to really pay attention to the address that they were living at. So I had to correlate the information between birth, death, and marriage records to the census records to figure out and make sure that I had the right family going through the decades. And of course, the other added wrench into it was that their names would become Americanized slightly. So you would question, well, wait a minute, this is a different name, but it's all the other facts are lining up. So they Americanized their name. It's tricky little stuff like that, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
It sounds like you developed some really good research strategies for tackling them early on, which is awesome that shows a lot of skill that, this unfamiliar group, and you were able to tame it pretty quickly. So that's awesome.
I tried.
Congratulations
Google
on
Maps
that.
also helped. I pulled up images from Google to make sure it made sense of, okay, well, they're at this different address now. Oh, it's a block away. It's 2 blocks away. That makes sense.
Let's take a quick break to hear a message from the Association of Professional Genealogists.
Hello. This is Kimberly Powell, President-elect of the Association of Professional Genealogists. APG is an international membership organization dedicated to supporting all individuals in the business of genealogy, whether you're an archivist, librarian, educator, writer, or researcher. Our 2,600 members include genealogists at all stages of their professional careers, from those just starting out to some of the field's most renowned leaders. Learn how to grow your business and network with other professionals through our educational webinars, informal mentoring groups, active discussion lists, the APG Quarterly, and our annual Professional Management Conference. Visit us online at apgen.org to learn how we can help you on your professional journey and how you can help us advance public awareness and understanding of the profession of genealogy.
All right, well, now we are going to enter the lightning round, where I am going to bombard you with a bunch of questions, and you're going to hit us with some great answers, which are going to be excellent for all the genealogists who are listening to help them improve their own business. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay. What was the one thing you were most afraid of in starting your business?
Customer dissatisfaction.
Oh, that's a new one. I haven't heard that one. Are you over that now?
Sort of.
Okay.
You always want your customer to be happy, right?
Right.
Because then they'll say to other people, oh, hire her.
Right. What is the best advice you've ever received?
I think when someone has told me, you've studied hard, you've done the work, you can do this. Don't doubt yourself.
Good. What is one specific action listeners can take in the next 24 hours to help them transition into a genealogy career?
Join APG. It's a wonderful resource. They have great webinars. They're archived for members. Their journal has a lot of good advice on how to deal with the various aspects of running a genealogy business.
Do you have a productivity tool like a Dropbox that you love that you can share with the audience?
I use Dropbox. It's fabulous. I love it. I can hire a researcher to pull records from the archives in DC, and they can either scan or photograph them, and I can have them either that evening or the next day.
Any other tools that you can't live without in your business?
One tool I'm learning more about that I really like what I've been seeing is Evernote. I've seen some amazing stuff that people have done with Evernote, and it's something I'm educating myself more about so that I can use it more fully. I don't think I use it right now to the best of its ability.
Yeah, I've heard very good things about that as well. What is your preferred social media channel for communicating with clients and also with colleagues?
For me, emailing is great. Phone calls I can do, but they are a little bit more challenging. I have kids. So after a certain time of the day, phone calls are really difficult. But email, I can always get on, and I love it. And as far as keeping in touch with colleagues, I sort of see Facebook as the water cooler. You go there and you kind of chat about the day or something that's happened or share whatever, and then you go back to work. But it's like your water cooler break. It's the break room.
Right. If you can recommend one book for our listeners, and it could be any book, genealogy, business, not related to either, what would that book be?
Only one?
I'll give you two.
Okay. I would recommend Mastering the Genealogical Proof Standard by Tom Jones and Evidence Explained by Elizabeth Shown Mills. Because if your work doesn't meet the current standards and you can't cite your sources, then you're setting yourself up for a lot of trouble.
Both good suggestions. All right, so here's a hypothetical scenario for you. You have to move across the country. You don't know anyone and you're not familiar with the research or the record groups in that new location. What are you going to do in the first month to hit the ground running and start a new genealogy business?
I would say you find the local genealogy society, you go to the archives, whichever they are. If you're not living near a large city archives, hopefully there's a county one or there's one in the county over. You go to the genealogy room of the library and you haunt these places. This will become your network. This will become the places that you go to find records. And it'll start to give you an idea of what kind of research goes on in those places, because you'll hear people talking. You'll hear people asking the archivists questions. You'll see that people are always pulling the same sort of records or having similar issues. And you'll get to know the archivists and the other people in the area that are interested in research or are researching. And you'll become familiar with what's available. And, like we were saying earlier, for an area, like if there's been a lot of courthouse fires, or if it's an area has a lot of colonial records that deals with westward expansion, or if it's an area that has a strong presence of a certain ethnicity, or religious group.
That sounds great. Give our audience one parting piece of advice and then tell us how we can get in contact with you.
I would say every day we leave a trail of records behind us. Our ancestors did too. Think outside the box. Look for alternative sources of information that are not the expected. And I can be reached on my website, which is crcgenealogy.com, or through email, cinamoncollins@gmail.com. And I'm also on Twitter, Cinamon C. And I have a blog, misadventures of a genealogist.blogspot.com.
And I will have links to all of these in the show notes. So after people listen, they can go to the website and find all the links so they can get in touch with you or learn more about you there. Cinamon, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed this.
In this interview with Cinamon Collins, we grappled with some of the really big issues that genealogy professionals have to deal with, such as projecting the amount of time it will take to complete a project or how to communicate with a client. Cinamon also had some really good answers for how to balance paid project time with volunteer time. Now, for an action item this week, I think I'd like to focus in on the action item that Cinamon gave you. And I asked her what would be the one thing she would recommend genealogists do in the next 24 hours to move towards a genealogy business. And she said to join APG, the Association of Professional Genealogists. So what I would like you to do this week is to think about, well, what organizations are in your area? What organizations can you network with? The Association of Professional Genealogists might not meet anywhere near you, whether you're in the United States, in the UK, wherever. That might not be a possibility for you to network with other genealogists. There may be genealogical societies or academic or archival libraries nearby that perhaps you can network with folks there. You can also even start your own group. But what I want you to do this week is to try to identify a group nearby where you can meet with people face-to-face, whether it's a professional organization or a mix of professionals and non-professionals. And after you identify that group, think about stopping by and getting to know the organization. I'm not asking you to join, but stop by, get to know the people, get to know the organization a little bit, see if you'd be comfortable joining that group. Because networking is a theme that's been going through all of the interviews so far. And with Cinamon mentioning it as an action item in this particular interview, I think that would be a good thing for you to focus on. Where can you get out and meet other professionals or mixed group of professionals and non-professionals that you can network with to learn about your area and just to get feedback from? Well, I hope you enjoyed this interview, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Until then, bye.